One of the things we did in preparation for the video series Home Improvement was to study the way God works with us. We wanted to ask the question, God is our Father, how does He bring about change in our lives? We believe that if we ask that question, how does God bring about change in our lives, then we might have some insight into how we can bring change into our children's lives. So that's our goal. I hope that as you listen to this particular session, we're going to delve into the idea of correction a little bit. And certainly we see correction in the Bible a lot. So there's a theology of correction that we can embrace, and just recognizing the value of correction is strategic. I hope that you'll take a look at that. When we wrote the book Home Improvement, we designed it in a way that it would be very practical, easy to read to your children. It would be a book that would give some ideas, some success principles for family life. Probably this one idea about correction is right on the forefront of what parents need, so enjoy this session as you look at it today. Most families need help in this area of correction, knowing how to work with their children when children have done something wrong. This is often when we have tempers flared, we have resistance taking place. A lot of drama in family life is centered around correction. So I want to delve into this issue a little bit more and understand more about correction. I would suggest that correction might be one of the hardest things that children have a hard time with. It's certainly in our programs at the National Center for Biblical Parenting, is where our biblical parenting coaches are at work with families. We often encounter children who have a hard time with correction. They react to it. They have a hard time receiving correction well. Sometimes it's because parents correct with anger and they're upset with their kids, and so it creates this hostility. But sometimes parents are doing all the right things. They're not raising their voice, they're correcting a child, and the child still has this internal aversion to correction. And I think our children need to understand a theology of correction. And so I want to share with you some very specific ideas that you can use as you help your kids grasp the value of correction in their lives. But before we do that, let's talk about the parent's attitude to correction. First of all, I think this will be very helpful for us because in Galatians chapter 6, 1 and 2, it says, if someone's been caught in a fault, you who are spiritual should restore them gently. So we need to be careful of our own spirituality as we come into the correction process. And there needs to be an attitude of gentleness. And I don't think gentleness means not firm. I think sometimes we need to be firm with our children, but we need to do it in a gentle fashion if we can balance those two things together. What we're trying to do is help our children grasp this and understand it and practice it in a powerful way. So that's the parent's attitude, which we must have, that's strong and powerful. Now let's take it to the child's level. Because when a child has a hard time with correction, they often react with anger, or they react with resistance or defiance. And we've got to go deeper into this child's life and help grasp this idea of the value of correction. Some kids just don't think it's valuable at all. It is valuable. Correction is this wholesome tool that we all need. Let me start with Proverbs 6:23. It says, the corrections of discipline are the way to life. Now, in the book of Proverbs, the word life and death are sometimes used about life and death, but sometimes they're used about a quality of life or a quality of death. And that's how it's used in Proverbs 6:23, where it says, the corrections of discipline are the way to life. You will have a better way of life if you learn how to respond to correction well. You'll do better in your understanding of life and growing faster if you can learn how to respond to correction. It's going to be so important. Knowing how to respond to correction in your life is an asset. It's a gift. You can learn things in all kinds of ways. You can learn things by watching a video. You can learn things by reading a book, by doing some research. You can learn things by listening to a teacher. You can learn things by listening to a parent. But one of the ways we learn things is by making mistakes and being corrected. So we have to have this ability to be corrected in life and be able to receive correction well. I regularly like to tell people I work with, I receive correction well, please correct me. I want to be corrected easily. And so if you see any problem with me, correct me. Because I've learned that there's real value in correction. It's a great way to learn and to grow. Proverbs 6:23, key verse for helping children understand that. But sometimes children still have this aversion to correction. I like to share with them another verse in the scriptures. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 1 says, anyone who loves correction loves knowledge, anyone who hates to be corrected is stupid. We don't use the word stupid in our family, but it's interesting that the Bible uses that term in Proverbs 12:1 to describe someone who hates correction. I love to have a discussion with young people about this. Why do you think people sometimes hate correction? Well, they hate correction, and why would it say they're stupid? And a young person once said, well, because if you keep doing the wrong thing and you don't listen to correction, then you'll look stupid. And I think that's very good analysis of that verse, that we must focus in on what God wants to do in our lives, and sometimes He uses correction to bring about that change. We must understand what that looks like, because when we look at Proverbs 6:23, he's talking about life. The corrections of discipline are the way to life. And we know that the gospel message brings life into us. It's the life of forgiveness of sin. It's the life that we have by knowing Christ and experiencing Him in His fullness. But there's a quality of life that we enjoy by knowing Christ. And part of that knowledge of Christ is the ability to receive correction and experience it, knowing that we're already forgiven, knowing that God is already at work in our lives. He uses this whole idea of correction to bring about change. We must grasp an understanding of the gospel message and how it comes into our work with our children. And children must receive this as well, because if they have to bear the weight of their own guilt, they will be very disappointed children. And maybe that's one of the reasons they don't like correction, because they don't want to feel bad about themselves. They don't want to admit they've made a mistake. Correction is a valuable tool that gets to the heart of some very important things, so we can make some changes, we can learn, and we can grow. One of the fun ways I like to teach this to children, to suggest to parents, that you say to your child, correction is a gift, because that's what it is. Correction is a gift that a person gives to you, and so I'm going to be giving you a gift, you can say to your child. And so later on in life, the child's made a mistake, and you say, hey, come on over here, I want to give you a gift. And the child comes, oh, okay. You say, hey, you shouldn't hit your brother that way. That's the wrong thing to do. That was a gift. And your son's going, what? You say, yeah, you need to say thank you to me. Thank you for giving you a gift, because I just corrected you. It's a valuable thing you need to learn. I think what we're trying to do is change the mentality, change the aversion children have toward correction, and accept it in a better way. It's just a powerful thing that we can do. Now, one of the tools that we use, and I want to take you to a technique now that's taught in Home Improvement Chapter 3, that can help you slow down the escalation that sometimes takes place during correction. This tool we call a break. Now, a break is a powerful tool that does slow down the escalation, but it's one of the hardest things that we teach. So I have to go through this just a little bit and help you. I think it's hard to teach because children don't like correction, but the break is exactly what they need. Now, we look at the break and we see it as a valuable tool, but it's not a timeout. We don't think you're going to see timeout in the Bible. In fact, I would suggest that timeout is like a punishment that you give for a child. It's focused on justice. You did this, you get that, for a certain length of time. And the parents are like the policeman who has to keep them there. The break is very different, because the break transfers responsibility to change the heart to the child. A very important responsibility children need to have. So it might look the same because you're sending child to sit down somewhere. We don't suggest you send them to their room, because that's like going to Great Adventure where all kinds of entertainment exists. They need to be in a boring place, maybe the top step or the bottom step of your stairway, or maybe in the hall, some boring place where they're not doing anything, but they need to settle their heart down. And that's all we say. We actually use these words. We suggest you use these words as well. You need to take a break, settle down, change your heart, and come back and see me when you're ready. We call it a break, but then we give them a mission. We say, you need to go settle your heart down. That's what you're going to do while you're there. Settle your heart down. You don't have to figure all of life out. You don't have to figure out all the repentance process there. You're going to come back. We're going to go through a positive conclusion when you come back. But you're going there to settle your heart down, because we can't continue. You can't argue with a child who's enraged. You can't try to correct a child who's enraged. The child needs to go take a break, settle down, and then change the heart. So we're focusing in on the heart. Does a 3-year-old know how to change the heart? Well, they're going to learn through experience. When I tell you to go take a break and change your heart, what you need to do is change your heart from a cloudy heart to a sunny heart. See, we're helping our children understand what this looks like in very practical terms. Change your heart, and then come back and see me when you're ready. What we've done now is we've transferred responsibility to the child. This is a key difference that makes the break work so powerfully, because we're transferring responsibility to the child for change. We're not putting them there for 5 minutes for a 5-year-old or 10 minutes for a 10-year-old, because we do not know how long it's going to take the Holy Spirit to work in their heart, or for their defiance to melt, or for their emotion to settle down. We do not know. And so it's better to say, you go change your heart, come back and see me when you're ready. And so we're transferring this responsibility to the child. It's so powerful, because now children have to wrestle. In that wrestling place inside of their heart, they have to come to the place where they're settled down and willing to come back and talk to the parent about it. Now, I'm sure you're thinking of all kinds of objections that you're going to experience with your child. I understand, because our coaches are regularly working with parents whose children resist the break. In fact, I have an encyclopedia of ideas to help you deal with the break when it's not going well or children are refusing to take a break. Let me just give you a couple of ideas that might be helpful as you are trying to implement this very important strategic idea. Some children, when you tell them to take a break, will say, "No, I'm not going to the break." I would suggest when a child says, "No, I'm not going to go to the break," that you go over to the child. Don't get too close to them, but you go over and you say to them, "You're doing the wrong thing. You need to take a break now." Because we want to stay in this mode here, and maybe moving close to them, not so close that you'd be in their space, but close enough that demonstrates your authority, that says you need to take a break now. Maybe the child will say, "Fine," and stomp off. Okay, I'm okay with that. At this point, we'll deal with attitude later, but the child's taking a break. But sometimes the child will not respond and say, "No, I'm not going to, and you can't make me." At that point, I would suggest you simply say to the child, "You're doing the wrong thing, you're in a break," and walk away. Because we want to use another very important discipline strategy in parenting, which is time. The conscience is at work in this child. The Holy Spirit's at work in this child. And sometimes it takes a little time for the child's conscience to come around, for the child to be able to be responsive and the emotions to settle. And so by walking away, you're allowing that to take place, and you come back 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later, you say, "You need to put the book down, you need to go take a break." And maybe at that point, the child will go forward and do that. But the point is, we don't have to escalate in family life. We're saying to the child, all life stops for you. Nothing happens for you until you stop and take a break, like I told you to do that. Now, maybe the child settles down, comes back, wants to go through the positive conclusion we talked about in our last session. Then we do that with the child, but then we say to the child, "Okay, I'd like to say you're free to go, but you didn't really take the break in the right kind of way. So I'm going to send you to take another break right now. Show me you can take the break in the right kind of way." And again, you have to realize some children are very stubborn, and some children will stomp off again, we know. And maybe they'll stomp off and go sit in the break place, but they'll be mad. When children don't want to receive correction well, they often try to bait their parents into some kind of dialogue or some kind of argument or some way to escalate the conflict in the home. Don't take the bait. It's very important you don't get sucked in. It's like children often, when they're angry, want to send out invitations to their anger party. "Come, please join me in my anger party." And it's amazing to me how many parents, "RSVP, I'll be right there," and they join the party. We do not have to do that. Don't get sucked in to your child's anger. Your child needs to be in a break and settle down before they can move forward. This is such an important strategy as we're trying to work with correction in a child's life. We can't get sucked into their drama. Another problem that sometimes happens with the break is you say to a child, "You're in a break," and you try to walk away, and the child starts to follow you. "I don't need to take a break. I want to get out of this right now. Let's talk about this. You're walking away from me." And children start to bait us again. And you're obviously not ready. You cannot reason with a child who's enraged. You cannot have a healthy conversation with a child who's defiant and angry. We must have them settle down. It's very important. But this, I think, is one of the hardest things about the break. It's just when a child follows you around, it's torture. Don't get sucked into the dialogue. I told one mom of a 16-year-old girl, she says, "My daughter follows me around." I said, "Well, why don't you go in your room?" "I do go in my room. She just follows me in there." I said, "Why don't you try this?" I said, "Go into your room, get down on your knees, and just start praying. Lord, I don't know what to do with my daughter right now. Would you please help me?" And so she did. The daughter is falling into her room. She goes into her room. She gets on her knees. Lord, I don't know what to do right now with my daughter. Would you please help me? And the daughter looked at her, turned around, and walked out of the room. I don't know what it will take for your child to respond, but we are going to implement a break. It is not an optional elective in life. It is a required course. All of us must learn how to take a break in life. It's so important because when our emotions start to ramp up, we need to learn how to pull back instead of push forward. Pull back instead of push forward. We must learn when we're defiant. We must take a break and settle our hearts down. This is a strategic element of our lives as adults. All of us as adults must learn to take a break at some time. You probably know people who you wish would learn how to take a break as adults. Well, let's start it with children when they're young. Let's start it with teenagers so they can learn such a valuable concept and grasp this in their lives. Proverbs 15:31 says this, "Whoever heeds a life-giving correction will be at home among the wise." The wise person is the person who knows how to respond to life. The wise person is the person who can take on the challenges and even make mistakes and learn from them. And one of the ways we experience that is through correction. Correction is going to be a part of our lives continually. It's one of these things we must embrace in our lives because it's going to happen. And there tends to be this defensiveness that wells up inside of adults and children sometimes when they experience correction. We need to learn how to deal with that in the moment. I love to ask the question, how do we help parents deal with correction? And I want to read to you what one of my coaches responded. And this was the question I asked in our online group. I said, why is receiving correction so hard for kids, and what can we do to help them receive it? Here's what she said. The heart makes commitments, the will makes choices, and behavior is where it all comes out. Sometimes what's going on in the heart is a mystery, but behavior is always on display. Correction is an important process parents use to help their kids grow into responsible adults. It involves change over the course of time and has an element of pain associated with it. Heart change is hard, and kids are often resistant to it. Here are 4 ideas to help parents correct their kids in a way that is to receive it better. 1, focus on teaching instead of justice with their children. Number 2, use sorrow instead of anger. Sorrow opens doors in relationships. Anger builds walls. Number 3, prepare for discipline times by planning consequences. Look for ways to tie consequences clearly to life so children can more easily learn from them. And number 4, talk about character, not just behavior, as you're helping children to change. And then she makes this statement to parents. She says, parents, spend a lot of time praying for your kids. Model humility during correction. Continue to correct even in the face of resistance. Look for creative ways to get your point across and trust God to maximize your work and provide other means to grow your children. By working on both behavior and the heart, you will achieve maximum change in your children and contribute to their success both internally and externally. Oh, I love that. It just summarizes the value of correction and the importance of our work as parents. Yes, we are trying to get things done during the course of the day, but there are times when our children get off track. And you need to know when the child gets off track, you can't continue to parent in the same way you parented before. Now you've got to stop trying to get things done and you have to move toward correction and try to bring correction about so the child can step back, make the changes that they need to make, and then re-enter life to get back on track. We want our children to be on track in life. Don't try to work with a child as if they're on track when they're off track. Go through the correction process. I think the break is a valuable tool that you're going to use, and tie that with a positive conclusion from our last session, and you'll see some major change take place in the child. The ability to receive correction, to be able to respond to it well, and then I think most importantly, to learn how to process it internally in their hearts so they grow up to be people who can respond well to correction in their future. It's not just about now. We're building our children with the life skills they'll use for the rest of their lives. So working now to help our children accept this. This is going to take a lot of work. Some children have an aversion to correction. It's going to take a lot more dialogue, but many children learn through practice, so the break becomes this valuable tool that helps them see, we're not going forward. We're not going to live this way anymore. We're going to respond to correction in a more healthy way, in a more powerful way, so that children can grow and develop in the midst of it.